Welcome to episode 10 of the Beyond the Guitar podcast, where we help you play the music you love and we talk all things guitar and beyond. I'm Nathan Mills, joined by my co-host Jeremiah Diaz. And
man, episode 10.
Yeah,
who'd have thought we'd make it this far?
It's the most consistent I've been on anything in my life. Yeah.
10 episodes in 11 weeks.
That's right. That's pretty good for my for my books. But yeah, we made it to episode 10. Feels good. I've been binging The Last of Us 2 for any of you gamers out there, and I was thinking about it's very polarizing.
Well, that's what. Yeah, I was gonna say maybe I'm not jealous.
Yeah,
I've heard it's very controversial.
Yeah, very, very much so. People are very divided. I personally really enjoyed it. I actually beat it for the sake of research because I'm doing an arrangement for it. But I was bringing that up because I binged it all weekend, and I feel like I'm just on edge all the time now because that game is so freaky. Like, you got to brace yourself to go into these areas where you hear the zombie, they call them clickers. They do this like echolocation because they're blind. And so you hear that creepy clicking sound. And then if they hear you, they just start charging at you. It's horrifying.
So that's where John Krasinski got his idea for that movie. What's it called?
The Quiet Place?
The Quiet Place. There you go. I was going to say Silent Place. That's not it.
Yeah. Close. But it just
Did you watch part 2 of that movie? I didn't watch it. I wasn't a huge fan of. Yeah, Quiet Place Part 2. Did they release it?
No, they didn't release it. It got coronafied.
Oh, it got pushed out? Yeah, coronafied. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wasn't a huge fan of the first one. I mean, I thought it was okay, but I thought it was overhyped. Anyways, sorry.
Yeah, well, just since we're going down that road, I will say it wasn't mind-blowing or anything as a movie. I will say as far as a experience in the theater, it was a very cool and unique experience to go and see it in the movies.
Oh, yeah. I didn't watch it in the theater.
Yeah. And I think the experience really varied based on the theater you went to and the crowd that you happened to be with. So the reason it was so cool was because it was so quiet, literally you could hear a pin drop in the theater and everybody was just silent. Okay. But I've heard some people's experiences ruined because people were making noise, and that it's even more noticeable in that. But anyway,
that makes sense. Yeah. To be clear, I didn't hate it. I just I liked it. I just didn't think it was as amazing as everyone else did it. But anyway, that probably would have made it a better viewing experience though.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, Last of Us 2.
Yeah, but I mean, it's just made me so on edge and just freaked out. I have to just stop after a certain amount of time because I just can't handle any more terror.
I remember being in high school and I would always try and get you to watch a scary movie. I would try and trick you and our buddy Leighton. I would try and put in a scary movie The Ring or something.
You tried to make me
watch The Ring. We're gonna watch this comedy movie, and then I'd put in The Ring, and you guys would just slowly be like, wait, what is this?
I was like, why is
fight me and wrestle
why is
me
the color grading I've never seen a comedy where everything just looks like gray and dark and depressing.
Although we did watch Saw, the very first Saw together.
Yeah,
and you were covering your ears the whole time.
Yeah,
I was so confused.
No, the strategy is I've learned you cross your eyes while you're looking at the screen. Because then you can't really see what's going on because you're all cross-eyed. I bet everybody's crossing their eyes right now. You cross your eyes, so you can't really see what's going on, but people who are sitting to the side of you can't tell that your eyes are crossed. It looks like you're watching, like you're not even phased.
I feel like it's just the most comedic image, somebody's crossing their eyes and covering their ears while watching a horror movie.
Well, I've learned since then that you don't cover your ears. If your eyes if you can't see anything, I can handle the noise. But man, I'm gonna have nightmares thinking about all this stuff now. But I wanted to bring it up because I record in this townhouse that we're using temporarily while we're building the new studio in my new house. And normally the drive to this townhouse is really nice. It's these beautiful like country back roads. So I enjoy the drive, but we have to record this podcast most of the time for me in the middle of the night because we got to, we record after the kids go to bed. And Jeremiah is in California, so that's, Pacific time, 3 hours behind me. So it ends up generally being around midnight for me. And so I made the drive over here at like 11:30 at night, and those beautiful country roads are a lot more sinister feeling when you're driving in the middle of the night after playing The Last of Us all weekend and half the week. And it's just like
coming after you.
Yeah, it's just like full like forests on both sides with these random little creepy back roads that you could go off that, with these like signs like no trespassing and stuff. And all I could imagine is just a zombie like jumping out in front of the car, or my car like, breaking down. And
man, we went camping. We went camping last week with some friends, and at night, it gets pitch black, and we were around a campfire most nights. But like, it's amazing how creepy raccoons can become when it's pitch black, because these raccoons are like really feisty and trying to get at your food. There was one time when a raccoon was literally opened one of our coolers. This is the first night that we learned that you needed to put everything away. Right. But they opened one of the coolers, and it was taking out a case of 3 dozen eggs, and it was just staring at us. And then we like looked at it, like flashed a light at it, and started yelling, running towards it. And it was just like trying to pull the eggs out as fast as it could while it was looking at us, but like not being phased. Eventually it ran off. But yeah, pretty much every night there was some raccoon attacks. Creepy little feisty things, rabid little creatures.
Yeah, I don't understand why anybody camps.
Well, it's not my favorite thing in the world personally, but my wife wanted to go, and we had to spend time with friends in like 3 months. So we're like, it was a good time.
Good.
We can go camping in your country roads area. Nathan.
Oh my goodness, the backwoods of Virginia. You never know what you can find out there. Some moonshiners.
At least it's not backwoods of West Virginia. Just kidding.
Yeah, just kidding to our West Virginia listeners.
Yeah.
Jeremiah's from California. He doesn't understand other parts of the country.
Well, yeah, it's true. I mean, I visited you enough times.
He thinks I have a southern southern accent. And I really don't.
You not as much. I mean, you do, but not as much. But Becca definitely has one. And your parents.
A little bit. Oh, man. Well, jeez. Yeah. So today, for episode 10, we wanted to talk about our biggest musical influences, whether it be bands, guitarists, just musicians of any kind. Not really talking about composers, since I come from the soundtrack angle. We'll probably save that for another talk. But our biggest musical influences from, the early days of us first being musicians ourselves, from there into today, people who have just either played just a big role in just our love for music in general, or musicians and artists who have, really directly impacted the music that we create now. So I want to kind of just kick it off by saying, this might seem a little bit cliche, but if we're kind of going chronologically, I have to talk about my parents, because I do owe a lot to my parents for for really exposing me to different styles of music from a very early age. And, you know, when you're a kid, that stuff just soaks in, you know, whether you're aware of it or not. And I'm convinced that a lot of that has really impacted my playing today. If we talk about my mom specifically, you know, she would sing me to sleep and comfort me with specific songs. There was like a go-to song that she would sing to me that now I sing to my daughter Emma when she goes to sleep. And that song in particular...
Let's hear it, Nathan.
No. That's
private.
Some things just have to stay sacred.
Okay, I got you. You don't have to embarrass yourself. It's okay.
Yeah, I've got a quota for embarrassment, so I have to pace myself. It's too early into the episode. But so that song in particular was always very just synonymous to comfort for me. And I love that my mom would do that, because I think that really kick-started my emotional connection to music. You know, we're talking from being an infant to a toddler to, you know, 6 years old. I was already associating music as a source of comfort, and making that emotional connection with it. My dad, he always had jazz and classical music, you know, regularly playing throughout the house. We had a tradition, we called it pancake music, where my dad would play, it was the Vivaldi Four Seasons. That would be playing, you know, like on a Saturday morning. And when we would hear that playing, we knew that we were having pancakes for breakfast. Like, it was just a simple thing like that. But I just love that they had the thought to make a tradition based around music like that. And just the fact that he had this really deep instrumental music playing on a regular basis, I think that really sunk in. And I definitely attribute a lot of that to my ability to be able to play musically, you know, with my interpretations of whether it's, you know, dynamics and rubato, like the ebb and flow of rhythm. A lot of those things have come fairly naturally to me, which I never thought about that until I would have, you know, sometimes classmates in college would ask me about how I go about playing musically and what my thought process and strategy is for it. And I was kind of shocked when they asked me that, because it's something I never really thought about so much, because it did come naturally to me, and I never really had thought about why that would come naturally to me. And I really do think that it's, you know, when you're a kid and you're hearing music that does have room for, you know, expression and musicality, which is, of course, classical music is all about that. Yeah, I just think I was fortunate to be able to soak that in, again, because of my dad.
I had this tape that my parents brought home from Spain. They went and visited Spain on this trip. I don't remember why they went, but anyway, they came back and they brought this tape that was classical guitar and flute, and it had all kinds of like classical Spanish pieces, you know, like Romance Anónimo and like all the, you know, a bunch of classics like that, Capricho Árabe, those ones.
Nice.
But I remember listening to it as a kid. Like I was probably before kindergarten, and I would just listen to that tape over and over and over. So yeah, that had a huge impact on me. But my brother probably had the biggest musical impact on me. My oldest brother Tony, because he was 8 years older than me, and he introduced us to a lot of electronic music, and he played piano and keyboard, and like a Korg synthesizer. So he would like make all kinds of he had all kinds of songs like saved on this little like disc that you would insert to the piano and stuff. And yeah, so that had probably the biggest impact on me was my brother Tony, and then my oldest sister Clara as well, because she was on the total opposite side of the spectrum. She listened to like oldies and like No Doubt and like, you know, kind of 90s like grunge, like Nirvana and stuff like that. And so as a kid, you listen to, you know, I was growing up listening to these things, and so I was exposed to a lot of stuff. Probably the biggest name that my brother introduced me to as a kid was Daft Punk. Tony introduced me to Daft Punk way back in the day, along with all kinds of other electronic musicians that no one's ever heard of, but that was cool. But I remember that tape, that Spanish tape, and I wish I had it still. But I remember being in middle school listening to it one day in Morocco, actually, and I remember it like just disintegrating before my eyes. Like I put it in the stereo and I pushed play, and it just like unraveled and like got destroyed. So I was so sad that day.
See, kids, cassette tapes had an actual tape that wound around, and
exactly.
We're kind of dating ourselves here.
Actually, hipsters have brought cassette tapes back.
Oh, really?
They're I don't know why. They're terrible quality.
Now it's not vinyl. They're going forward toward cassette tapes.
I think they were trying to bring them back, and then they kind of died out again. But something about the noisy quality of tapes. They were trying to bring back.
So did the was Capricho Árabe? Was it like a flute guitar duet on that album?
Yeah, it was weird. Like the whole album was like flute and guitar duet.
Oh, interesting.
And it just had all kinds of classical Spanish pieces specifically. Yeah. And man, I just remember loving that cassette tape.
You were exposed to classical guitar way before I was. That's cool. I do have to mention too, like if we're still talking childhood stuff, my most memorable moments as far as video game music, I always have to attribute back to that first time playing Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening on the original Game Boy. That's the first time I remember really being impacted by video game music. And so, you know, this was certainly an influential moment for me because, again, you know, so much of what I do now revolves around video game music. And but I remember putting my Game Boy beside a cassette player and just recording, letting it just sit there and have the soundtrack kind of loop and recording that and listening to that as I went to sleep. We might have already talked about that in another episode, but that was definitely that soundtrack was a big influence on me for sure.
That's pretty awesome. I think the earliest video game music that I remember, like, oh, I love this was Sonic the Hedgehog, the very first one on Sega Genesis. Like, what does it go?
It's like Green Hill Zone or something, I think.
Yeah. You still haven't touched Sonic, man.
I haven't. I started an arrangement of that theme. I think it was back when one of the new Sonic games was coming out. That was like, I forget what it's called, but it's one of the ones that was kind of an homage to the retro Sonic.
Gotcha.
And I was working on that, but it just didn't happen. But one of these days. So if we move on then to like the early days of us being musicians, so really like into the high school era, for me there was really, of course there were so many bands that I listened to back then, but there were two that were really the most influential for me. And number one is Sweetacra, which is this, I don't even know how did we even discover Sweetacra?
I'm pretty sure Leighton.
Yeah, so we had a friend. Leighton. Yeah, we had a friend in high school, Leighton, who was always, discovering these obscure metal bands and exposing us to them.
And Sweetacra, we later found out was just the lead man. The lead man's name backwards is Arcadius. Right. Backwards.
Yeah.
So it's like
if that's weird, even his real name. What a name. True. What a name. Arcadius. But yeah, it's just like, I guess it's like Viking metal. And it's got this kind of Celtic these Celtic melodies played on electric guitar, and with the whole metal growling and everything too. But the reason it was really impactful for me was because I feel like this was the first band that I was really legitimately obsessed with, and that really inspired me to want to push myself as a guitarist, and at the time as a songwriter of sorts. I actually reached out to them at one point, asking him how how he comes up with all these cool riffs, and asked him if he had any tabs of his songs. I was just being an obnoxious kid.
Didn't he respond saying he doesn't have enough time to make tabs or something like that? And
yeah.
And you were blown away that he responded to you.
I was so starstruck. He's like, yeah, no, I don't have time for that. But the fact that he responded, I thought it was awesome. Because in my mind, this guy was a rock god, super famous.
I was gonna say that's I feel like that's the classic rock metal response. I don't have time for you, kid.
Yeah.
I got better things to do,
right.
Drink booze or, ride dragons or whatever the heck he was doing.
Whatever he was doing. Yeah, I don't know. I don't even know if they're still around, but that was the first band that I was really obsessed with, and that propelled my desire to really go hard after the guitar. And then the next band that really impacted me was Opeth, and we've talked about them a little bit. Specifically with them, I feel like they really exposed me to both extremes of guitar playing. So they would have, the heaviest of metal riffs, juxtaposed against, these beautiful fingerstyle or even classically inspired passages of their songs played on classical guitars or steel string guitars sometimes. And some of those were literally in the same song, right? They would cover such a huge range just in one song. And that was just, I'd never heard anything like that before. So that was my first time really exploring fingerstyle, even, and again, borderline kind of classical guitar. And it pushed me in both those areas. It pushed me to improve because I was learning so many of their songs. And so I was growing both as an electric guitar player and as a fingerstyle / classical guitar player, even though this was before I started taking classical guitar lessons. And I feel like I can see some direct influence from them even now in my arrangements. Because even though I'm just playing classical guitar in my arrangements, I think that huge dynamic and emotional range that they would capture in their songs in one individual song, going from, again, super dark and heavy metal all the way to, folk and bluesy and classical stuff. I like to try to explore those broad ranges in my own arrangements as well. Something that might just be normally kind of a relaxing, chill piece. I like to, in many cases, see how I can add variety to it and add intensity to it and build it and play around with that, again, that dynamic and emotional range.
Yeah, I got to give credit to Leighton again for introducing us to Opeth, because I remember the first time listening to Blackwater Park, which I think was their second or third album at that point. I don't remember, but
yeah, it was definitely a few in.
Because there was Still Life before that, right?
Yeah.
Anyway,
yeah.
And Watershed. So it might have been their third album. I don't remember, but I just remember listening to Blackwater Park. That's the first album I heard of theirs, and I was blown away. I was by myself, and yeah, I just remember thinking man, this is incredible the way that they're going from these, like you were saying, crazy hard riffs and screaming or more growling into these beautiful guitar, steel string mostly guitar passages with jazz lead guitar over on top, and it was just mind blowing. I can't listen to all their stuff now. I've just stylistically, it's not my jam anymore. But every once in a while, I'll throw on some of their old stuff on, and it's just like, man, these guys were talented.
Yeah,
and you can see the influence too in our our first song that we wrote, the epic, because Opeth had these crazy long, like 13-minute songs, and so we felt like we had to match their their length. So
yeah, except it was like 17 minutes. The opus. One of these days we'll let you guys hear it.
Oh man, but yeah. As far as but for myself, like I was never as good a drummer when in high school as the drummers like in Opeth and other metal bands. But there was one band for me, which was ISIS, and unfortunately they have a terrible name now.
That didn't age well.
This is pre the ISIS, the terrorist organization. There's a metal band called ISIS, and that's after the Egyptian goddess, so not after the terrorist organization. But anyway,
poor them. That's bad.
Yeah, I know. Well, luckily they had disbanded by the time.
That's right.
The terrorist guys came around. But anyway, ISIS had a very unique metal sound, and their drummer was very minimalist, and I loved his style. And he didn't really play double bass, double kick pedal, anything except for in the last albums. I think he brought it in, but for Oceanic, the album Oceanic and Panopticon, those two albums were like huge influences on me just in general, because musically I loved what they were doing. It was very like minimalist, like almost post rock, like almost Explosions in the Sky, but like it was heavier and a little darker. They just had some awesome stuff. Anyway, ISIS was big on me for drumming, because it wasn't super complicated drums, but it was like it was very intentional, and I really like that about their sound.
Right.
And one drummer that I really liked growing up that I found on YouTube way back in the day is this German drummer called Benny Greb. And I loved him because he was very tasteful in the way that he would solo. So like there was one video in particular I saw where he did this amazing solo, and it wasn't just him playing like 64th or 128th notes like as fast as he could, which I feel like a lot of drummers were doing. He would actually like play these awesome beats with fills, like these crazy fills in between, and he kind of opened up a whole other world of drumming for me. So Benny Greb, he's a huge influence for me. But anyway,
I think intentional is a good word, because that was one thing always with Opeth for me as well, because they back then I was really into the whole electric guitar world, but they did the whole, almost every song of theirs had a guitar solo in it. But I felt like every note was very intentional, like you were saying, where it was very melodic. It wasn't just shredding, through these different scales and just playing as fast as they possibly could. It was very tasteful, and I think that's really stuck with me as well, because I've never been about shredding and trying to be able to play the fastest and craziest stuff. Like, it's always been more about really lyrical things and melodic things, and so that drew me to them as well, because typical guitar solos, even solos that are generally considered iconic, don't do anything for me. So yeah,
that's one of the things I love about now changing gears to Jimmy Page. We listened to a lot of Led Zeppelin back in the day.
Yeah,
and I think of like songs like "Since I've Been Loving You," and just he's basically soloing the whole time, but it's like, like you're saying, intentional and like just so beautiful and melodic, and it's never like. It never feels like he's just going crazy just to go crazy, and it fits within the song. Man, right. I love that. I love that song.
Yeah, listened to a lot of Led Zeppelin back in the day.
Yeah, Jimmy Page's tone is just beautiful too. It's got that like bite and that crispness and that dirtiness. Oh man, it's so nice.
Yeah, that's a lot of nostalgia with that for sure.
I know.
I only listen to, I guess it's kind of sad, but same like you were saying, like Opeth and some Led Zeppelin. I have a couple tracks on like my nostalgia playlist, which that playlist gets a lot of playtime because that's, if I'm just, if I'm driving somewhere or if I'm just listening to music, more often than not, I am playing that nostalgia playlist because that's just nostalgia for me is just so powerful. And so, I mean, again, we did a whole episode about that. But that's really the only time that only a couple tracks from Opeth made it onto that.
Gotcha. Yeah.
But yeah, what other bands do you have? Because that's really the couple that I was just going to touch on.
Oh man, I mean, for me, there's so many, but I mean, I was big into electronic music as well. So I could go on for days. But I think one that I'll mention that probably most people don't know is this little French duo called Telepop Music.
Yeah, I remember you introducing me to them.
Yeah, and they just have these really, and they haven't done anything for a while, but they have a couple albums from the early 2000s, and they just have these like mellow, like warm, soothing tones on these electronic like beats and stuff. With they usually have like guest vocalists on their tracks. Anyway, they have this one song called "Breathe," and the lyrics are super simple. Most of the song is it goes just breathe, like that's all the lady says that's singing. There are a few other lyrics. Like one of them is like staring at the ceiling. That's one of the lyrics. And I remember just like listening to that during my college years and just like kind of being kind of emo and like, that's right. I wish I had a girlfriend or whatever. And I'll just like listen to that song on the ride home or whatever, like driving home from a buddy's house or whatever. And this is being all this hopeless romantic. But Telepop Music, that's the one I'll mention because there's so many.
Yeah.
But yeah, Telepop Music had a huge influence on me, and stylistically as well. I try and emulate a lot of their mellow, like subtle tones a lot.
Right. What was it that, and I might be kind of jumping ahead here a little bit, but wasn't it them who were they kind of that glitch sound? Because I know when you really first started kind of developing your compositional voice, I remember you talking a lot about like, I don't even, is that a genre? I don't remember how that was used in context. You know what I'm talking about?
I'm trying to think. So Telepop Music, I mean, they don't have as many glitchy. I mean, they do have some glitchy sounds in there. Trenton Moeller was another one who uses some of that. So I'm not sure. I mean, a lot of the electronic influence that I've gotten, I've written in songs that I haven't ever released, and they wouldn't even fit under the Chomachi style because it's just such different type of music. I mean, I have a name actually. It's Glisten Walk. I have one track out there which is a remix of my oldest brother Tony. He has an artist name called Kubrikan. Anyway, he released a song with his wife, and I remixed that because he asked me to remix it. So that is out there actually. You can listen. You can look for it. It's called Chase the Sound. Glisten Walk remix. But I've been meaning to like finish a lot of those Glisten Walk tracks. I just haven't ever gotten around to it.
Yeah.
And the whole Chomachi project has kind of like taken all my attention. So unfortunately, I haven't had time to go get back to those. But yeah. So I think you're talking about that one collaboration that we did way back in the day. What's it called?
Is that Shimmer?
Shimmer. Yeah. Is that what you're talking about? Like the little like sparkly things at one point?
Yeah, I think so.
Definitely. Yeah, that would definitely be from Telepop Music influence for sure.
Gotcha.
Oh man, now I feel like I need to release that.
Yeah, you should. That was actually pretty good. It was a good
That
collab.
Could probably fit under the Chomachi banner, right?
It could. Yeah, you should
Anyways.
totally release that. We can talk about it on a podcast episode. I'm
I'll have to get back to that. It's so old. It's like 10 years old by now.
Yeah, I listened to it kind of recently because I remember we did it. You had already basically composed that whole song, and then I was visiting you one summer, and I don't remember how it all played out. Why we decided to add guitar to it, but I don't even think I had it was an electric guitar we were going to use, and I borrowed your brother's Telecaster, and something about that Telecaster, man, I loved the tone of that, where it's like the vibrato. I don't know if it was the string tension or what, but like you could get this really sweet vibrato with it, and that combined with just the simple tone from the amp. I just really liked the tone and the playability of that guitar, to where I think it turned out really, really well. So you should totally release that.
Yeah, I need to finish it. Yeah, for those listening, it's a rare glimpse into Nathan playing electric guitar. So
yes, very tastefully and intentionally.
Yes. No shredding, no wanking on the. Am I allowed to say that? I don't know if I'm allowed to say that.
Yeah,
it's a guitar. It's a legit guitarist term, right?
It is. That was the first thing I was gonna say, and then I did censor myself. We were all thinking it.
I know. Oh man.
So for me, I kind of want to move on to specific guitarists who had a big influence on me. I want to start out just because I feel like I have to mention Segovia, right? For any of you classical guitarists out there, you understand that it's safe to say that I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing without him, right? Most people who play classical guitar, most of the repertoire that you know would not exist without him, because he really did the huge push to make the classical guitar a serious instrument and to get all these composers to make music for it. So for that reason, I do owe him a lot, but it doesn't go anywhere beyond that, because he seemed like an arrogant jerk, and I have no patience for, through music school and just a career as a musician, you run into a lot of those, especially in the kind of classical scene, really arrogant and, sometimes even just straight up cruel musicians. They get these huge egos and act like the world revolves around them, and I can't tolerate that at all. And if you watch old master classes with Segovia, he was just sometimes just a monster to the students, and so because of that, I kind of lost respect for him in most areas when I watch those videos. I mean, I've thought about this recently, and I give him a little bit more grace, because I think he probably had to develop some rough edges, because he was fighting such an uphill battle trying to get people to take the classical guitar seriously. So I almost feel like he kind of had to put on a certain persona, but I don't know. I might be giving him too much credit, because again, he was just he's just super mean sometimes. But my favorite classical guitarist, hands down, is David Russell. He has just my favorite tone, and it's that balance of his tone and his virtuosity makes him my absolute favorite. And I highly recommend listening to his album Message of the Sea. It's all these arrangements that he did of these Celtic tunes. And so that's, marrying two things that I love. I've always loved Celtic music. And
I forget, is he Irish or Scottish?
He's Scottish, yeah.
Scottish, okay.
So it's marrying classical guitar, which of course I love, and Celtic music that I love. and arranging, which I love. He's doing all that there.
It's the trifecta.
It's the trifecta. Such a good album. So many good pieces. I've played a few of them. Neil Gow's Lament for the Death of His Second Wife. It's a real title of a piece. That's a beautiful, beautiful tune. My sister actually, when she was getting married, asked me to play that piece for her during her ceremony, I guess, as she was walking down the aisle, because she'd heard me practicing it, but she didn't know the title of it. And so I was like, I don't think at a wedding, Neil Gow's Lament for the Death of His Second Wife, it was really going to play, because not only is it, death is involved, but it's also a second wife, so you don't know what happened to the first wife.
Happened to the first wife?
Either death or divorce. Neither bode well for a wedding.
There was
ceremony.
No lament for the first wife.
Yeah,
no love lost.
She didn't get a lament. But yeah, it's such a beautiful piece. And then Spatter the Dew is a really cool jig in there that I've also performed before. So I highly recommend that. He's also the only one of my favorite classical guitarists who I've seen live. And that was such a cool experience. I always use this as an example too, kind of talking about how mistakes aren't as big of a deal as we make them out to be in live performances. We freak out about them and everything. When I got to see him live, there was a moment where he made a very noticeable mistake that I caught, and I absolutely loved him for it. Like that was such an impactful moment for me, because it made him more relatable and more human, and it encouraged me to see that even one of my guitar heroes, has moments.
Yeah.
So that was really cool. And of course, the concert was amazing. Another guitarist, Julian Bream, he's certainly one of the fathers of the classical guitar as well. I've always loved Bream for his musicality and his vibrato. That really influenced me when, so David Russell kind of influenced my tone back in college. I was really kind of chasing his specific tone. And then I was chasing Julian Bream's musicality and vibrato. He just has this, I think it's probably a combination of those old recordings and his tone that it's just such a haunting sound. But he's got this like otherworldly vibrato that's like so extreme sometimes, but I love it. I have some students who make fun of me for how much I vibrato and how much I'm obsessed with vibrato, but I think I do it tastefully.
It's a beautiful sound,
It is.
Can't deny it. Just adds some soul.
Who doesn't love a little warble in their notes?
Yeah. It's like all violinists do is vibrato.
Right. That's right. You don't have to play the right pitch, just vibrato, and you kind of circle your way around it, and you'll be good.
It's like in violin, in musical notation, you have to indicate when to not vibrato. Otherwise, it's just assumed.
It's just the default. Is that for real? Is that real?
Yeah, that's for real. Yeah.
Oh wow, that's crazy.
Actually, you hear it all the time in scores, especially like horror movie music. They'll do like harmonics where they're not vibratoing. They're just
it's just a straight note.
Yeah, what do you call it? Bowing. They're just bowing the string, and there's no vibrato, and it adds this. It gives this weird, like eerie kind of sound.
Right, especially you're so used to hearing the vibrato.
Yeah, exactly. You're used to hearing the vibrato, and there's no. It like creates this weird tension. Anyway, it's a cool effect. I like it.
Interesting.
Anyway, tangent.
The last classical guitarist that really influenced me as well was Marcin Dia. Specifically, I first discovered him in his performance. There's a video of him on YouTube playing Junto al Generalife by Joaquin Rodrigo. And I love his musical expression and his virtuosity. He, if you watch him perform, he is kind of a little borderline over the top as far as how much he outwardly gets into the music. He does a lot of, really big hand gestures and really leans into the guitar, like he's really feeling the music. So it almost, there's some guitarists who I feel like really cross that line, and I'm like, okay, relax. Just reel it back a little bit. You're not experiencing the music at that much deeper of a level than the rest of us. Oh, man. But he flirts with that line, but in my mind he doesn't cross it. And kind of on those lines, I also have to mention Tommy Emmanuel. Generally speaking, he's not my favorite style of playing. A lot of that kind of more groovy, upbeat fingerstyle playing. But the thing that really influenced me about Tommy, he is, of course, he's an amazing player, but he is an amazing performer. I've seen him live twice. And he really showed me how important your stage presence is as part of a performance. It's not just about what you're playing, it's how you carry yourself, how you kind of interact with the crowd, the audience. Even, of course, in a classical setting, it's a little bit more tamed. But, you can do little things to still interact with the audience. And so that was really impactful for me, because he's hilarious too.
Oh man, Nathan, you just reminded me of I went and saw ISIS live one time, and it was like one of their last tours, and
that's right.
Do you remember this? I I made a CD of all of our little album that we made, and I like fought my way to the front as they were getting off stage, and I like yelled I yelled at Aaron Turner, the front man for the band. And I gave him the CD, and he like looked at me and he grabbed it and he said, "Thank you." And then he walked away. I mean, it was there's a lot of people, and it's not like we were about to have a conversation or something, but I just remember thinking like, oh man, he took it. Oh my gosh, I don't know what I was thinking.
I don't remember that at all. That's crazy. Jeremiah was like, "This is my moment."
Yeah. And I remember writing out this thing, like saying like, "Hey, like these recordings are really rough. Like I just wanted to share this with you." I don't know. I think I wrote my email in there. I don't know what I was thinking. But
hey, you know what? You were taking your shot, man.
He was
you were putting yourself out there.
Well, it was mostly you, because I was pretty much. We did have a couple of tracks on there that were me, the piano piece, right, and then that like whale song at the beginning. I don't know. Anyway,
that's right.
Most of it was you, but I do remember thinking like it was cool that he took it and he said thank you. I was like, oh man, that's a cool guy.
That's right. He was way nicer than Arcadius.
Yeah, I don't have time for this. Oh, but Nathan, I was going to say, I'm surprised. I know this guy isn't a classical guitarist, but I'm surprised you didn't mention Phil Keaggy.
Oh my gosh, Phil Keaggy. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, you missed out on your boy, man. What kind of Christian are you anyway?
No, Phil Keaggy, like, holding it down for the good Christian fingerstyle guitarist community.
I remember there was always this story going around about how, like, I remember all the grown-ups would tell us, like, Jimi Hendrix asked Phil Keaggy, or no, that wasn't it. That was somebody asked Jimi Hendrix if he was the best guitarist in the world or something like that, and he's like, no, that's Phil Keaggy. Do you remember that?
I do, yeah.
Was it
Jimi Hendrix?
Yeah, it's definitely.
That can't be a real story.
It's not a true story at all. But like, I just remember all like the grown-ups in our lives tell us that story. Anyway,
right?
We saw Phil Keaggy live once.
Yeah. I mean, I think Phil Keaggy really was the first, like, kind of virtuoso instrumental fingerstyle guitarist that I heard, and yeah, he was a big inspiration and influence on me. That's terrible that I didn't even remember to put him down.
Oh man, his early stuff especially is so good. A lot of his later stuff I'm not into at all. Like his more recent stuff, it's definitely more like worshipy style music. But
right,
his early stuff is really, really good. And
yeah, because he only has 9 fingers. Yeah, that was always the thing too that blew my mind. Is he's missing his I think it's his ring finger on his right hand.
Was it his ring finger or his middle finger?
I thought it was his ring.
I gotta look this up now.
Oh, maybe it's middle. I don't know.
I think it's middle finger. Hold on, I'm gonna look it up.
Yeah, look it up. But he did a lot of that kind of folky and also borderline Celtic inspired. A lot of his pieces.
Yeah, it's his middle. He's missing his middle finger on his
middle finger.
right hand.
Man, I'm just failing left and right on poor Phil. I'm a fake fan. I'm sorry, Phil. I'm sure you're listening to this. So
right, yeah.
I hope you're fine with me calling you Phil, and I'm sorry for forgetting about you.
I remember seeing him live in high school in Morocco, of all places, and that was pretty awesome.
Yeah,
he was.
That was a crazy concert.
Yeah.
That was cool. I mean, there's I think that was also the first big kind of festival concert type thing I've ever been to.
Yeah. Besides the the festival that we had, in Ujda that one time. Where we packed out that house.
Yeah. We were supposed to play a concert. There was supposed to be like a stage built and everything in this little town out in the middle of nowhere. I don't even know how they
were opening an American institute, like an American school, basically, in this little town called Ujda in Morocco.
Yeah,
and they invited us to come play.
The government shut us down.
It did,
but we stuck it to them, and we played inside a house.
It was basically
we literally did pack out that house.
It was insane. I mean, people thought we were like a legitimate American band.
They thought we were famous because the people had like posted experience. Flyers all over the town saying like we were an American rock band, and they like a bunch of people came up to us and wanted to like, take selfies with us afterwards, and like we had to like wade through the crowd to leave. It was our 15 minutes of fame.
Yeah. We were like 16, 17 years old. Oh yeah,
we peaked. I think we peaked.
Yeah, definitely. That was my
we peaked in high school.
Yeah, it's all downhill from there. I don't get that term. Downhill, uphill? I don't know. Which one is it?
Yeah, we went through this in another episode you were very confident in your saying it was downhill.
I don't know. I've heard,
because I wasn't sure.
Since that episode, I've heard multiple people say it, and they're confused about it. It's like, is it uphill, downhill?
Nobody
I don't know.
Knows. Nobody knows.
I don't know. Anyway, Phil Keggy.
Yeah.
He's a boss.
Yeah, Phil Keggy. Include him in there, definitely, for sure.
Or we had a few like live DVDs of his stuff.
Yeah,
his instrumental stuff.
Yeah,
cool.
I had some of his books too to go through learning his songs, but I don't think I ever ended up. It was too intimidating.
Oh, actually, my buddy Andrew, the one that I'm in the band with, he said that he went to a Phil Keggy concert one time, and I don't know how, but he had some kind of backstage access, and like he like jammed with Phil Keggy for like an hour or something, and he said he was like super nice, like a super nice guy.
I'm sure he is.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's great. I feel like I would be way too freaked out to jam with any of my heroes. Yeah, I'd be like, nah, that's all right. Let me just sit here and listen to you.
You don't give yourself enough credit.
Yeah. I think, and then as far as other guitarists too, I do have to mention kind of on the content creation side, the people that really influenced me in the sense that they inspired me to pursue making my own, YouTube videos or form of, making music videos of some form on the internet, is Acoustic Trench. I've mentioned him before. First inspired me back in the Vine days. And then Eddie Vandermeer, as far as the YouTube world, was really kind of pioneering the kind of video game movie covers for guitar on YouTube. And he was one of the first guys that I discovered who was doing what I wanted to do. So I definitely have to give those guys shout outs for inspiring me in that sense.
Yeah, I've definitely been inspired from just YouTube and all the lo-fi music out there. I remember loving any any piece of music that had some sort of a retro, like kind of lo-fi, kind of crappy like effect on a song. Like I remember, okay, one example is Opeth. I think was it Hope Leaves? That one song that goes boom doom doom boom boom boom. Is that Hope Leaves?
I don't know.
There's this little interlude between the first chorus and the second verse that has like this vinyl like tape noise, and it just sounds really like kind of, I mean, it doesn't sound crappy, but it sounds crappy and like kind of like bad. Anyway, but it's beautiful. It's like a 5-second moment in that song, and I just remember loving anything like that in music. Telepop music does it a lot. They have a lot of they make their portions of their songs sound like lo-fi, and I remember actually working on your piece Far From Final, Nathan, that electric guitar piece that you wrote, and I remember I remember putting a little intro in there. That was noisy and vinyl-y, and I like detuned parts of it, and you're like, that sounds. You were like, that sounds really bad. I'm like, no, it sounds awesome. It sounds awesome. This was before all the lo-fi movement.
You were a lo-fi pioneer.
Well, I don't know if pioneer is the right word, but I was definitely a lo-fi lover. So once like all the lo-fi stuff started coming out, I was like, oh, well, maybe I should start making it. And anyway, that has had a huge impact on me, just as far as like, I just need to start making this stuff because I like it.
Right.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, these days, my biggest influences really are just, kind of my like colleagues, people on YouTube and Instagram, my guitarist buds that are out there doing their thing, making cool stuff. Because honestly, this might come across as really weird and surprising, but I really don't listen to very much guitar music these days. And that's a lot of that comes from because I think it's just because guitar is what I do. It's very hard for me to, if I'm just going to listen to music just for sheer enjoyment, it's hard for me to listen to, classical guitar or just instrumental guitar music and turn off that part of my brain that wants to kind of break down what's happening and think about, oh, well, I could do this, or and so I think a lot of people can probably balance that well, but it's just for me personally. It's just, I get into either like a comparison game or just this analytical, game to where like, I want to be able to do my thing and not worry about what other people are doing, not try to emulate what other people are doing. I definitely encourage people in their formative years of playing to, like listen to so much guitar music, because you need those influences to kind of help blend together into your own sound. But then, once you get to a certain point, I think you can kind of make that choice for yourself based on what you know of yourself, on whether or not, how much of that type of music you should consume versus create. So yeah, might be weird, but I honestly, I don't listen to a lot of guitar music these days.
Yeah, it's weird for me. I have a hard time finding new music that doesn't give me a certain feeling. Like mostly I'm looking for a nostalgic feeling. So I've been getting into a lot of lo-fi music, a lot of synth wave music, which is like kind of like based off of 80s music, but with more of a driving beat and like melody, and it's usually a little bit, well, it's not always darker, but yeah, synthwave music, because it just brings back this nostalgic feeling from I don't even know where it comes from, because I wasn't that into the 80s music when I was growing up, but yeah, I've just been seeking out music, and not necessarily intentionally, just like the music that brings these certain feelings in my body or whatever. I don't know, like these nostalgic feelings.
Right, yeah.
That's what I want to listen to. So it's really hard for me to find new music. And then
it's because we're old, Jeremiah.
It's because we're old.
We're old.
I just turned 31.
I think it's like,
oh my gosh.
Yeah, you lock your. I think what they say, like your musical taste locks in, like when you're 20 or something. Like
yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. It really, and I think we're saying the same thing. Like most of the music that I listen to is on my nostalgia playlist, which is like, if I pull that up, some of this might be surprising too. Like a lot of the music that I listen to will probably, definitely surprise people. Like on my nostalgia playlist, I got Dashboard Confessional, I got POD, I got some Hozier.
You got some Linkin Park on there?
I do have Linkin Park. I've got Death Cab for Cutie. I've got The Strokes.
Coldplay.
Coldplay, yep. Hoobastank.
Hoobastank. Oh no. Oh, man.
And that's the thing too, because we talked about this in the nostalgia episode where it's not even that like the Reason by Hoobastank. Like if I heard that for the first time today, I would laugh and skip it.
Yeah.
But I listen to it because it's like, it reminds me of that time in my life, like seeing that music video coming on MTV. I got like Muse, Imogen Heap,
oh dude,
Blink 182, System of a Down.
That's hilarious. Man, so many of the bands that you're naming, I was thinking about talking. Well, I just basically made a giant list of bands and artists that influenced me. I didn't mention all of them, but like, yeah. Well, it's funny too because like so many of the bands that are still making music today, I don't listen to their current stuff because I just don't like it. So Coldplay is one.
Coldplay.
Yeah, Coldplay's one. Opeth is another one. Opeth's new stuff, I can't. It's like weird prog metal.
Yeah, they got real weird.
It's just like I can't listen to it.
It's like, what is it? You either die the hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
Yeah. Harvey Dent. R.I.P. Harvey Dent. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's, I imagine our nostalgia playlists would probably look very similar. But there are some surprising kind of guilty pleasures that I have as well on like, that aren't nostalgia. They are newer things. Like, I listen to some Post Malone. I'm going to be honest. I listen to some Billie Eilish.
Billie Eilish, she's talented. I'm not into all of her stuff, but like heard that one song, I Love You. Is that it? I think it's I Love You, right?
Yeah. That's the duet she did, right? Or no?
Yeah, with her brother.
Well,
right?
I think a lot of the stuff is with her brother.
It's not.
I was thinking Lovely with Khalid.
Gotcha. No,
that one's really nice. I Love You. Yeah, that one's good too.
Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. So she's talented for sure. She's young.
Yeah,
man.
she's kind of. Yeah, she's one of the only like current pop artists that I really like. That I feel like is it doesn't sound like everything else.
It's like I respect what she's doing because it sounds like her and her brother just kind of have creative control, and I feel like that's really rare these days. You think about like a lot of other, like old school pop artists, like the Backstreet Boys or NSYNC or Britney Spears or Christina Aguilera. Like none of them were writing their own music. They just had producers, and unfortunately, sometimes that leads to a lot of like downward spirals.
Formulaic.
Well, formulaic, but then also downward spirals in people's lives and careers. Think about Britney Spears, for example. But
they have breakdowns.
Yeah.
Meltdowns.
Yeah. But anyway, so I respect the fact that it seems like Billie Eilish and her brother are pretty much doing their own thing, which is cool.
Yeah.
Even if I'm not into all of it.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah, so I think it's definitely like both of us have very eclectic tastes.
Yeah.
And I think
sure.
that is that is very I think that's important, and I think that plays a really big role in the music that you can create, because you're not pigeonholed into a specific sound.
Yeah.
And I could, you never know what these subconscious connections your mind is making under the surface. Like I could listen to a Post Malone tune and somehow that could influence, some arrangement that I'm making in some way.
Yeah.
I don't compose my own real music, as Jeremiah was making fun of me before the podcast.
Yeah, you just freaking rip off of everybody else. Make your millions.
Yeah. Strike that from the record. I do not make millions.
But that's a good point. Like we both grow up in very kind of diverse cultures. Like I'm half Mexican, so like my mom's side of the family like listen to Mexican music. There's a lot of Mexican music that I actually really love. I would never make that kind of music, but I'm sure it influences me in some ways. And then we both grew up overseas, and in Morocco, and you lived in Egypt for a time. So yeah, we got exposed to all kinds of stuff. So that's been very very beneficial for us, I think, musically.
Yeah, lots of different music cultures. Traveled a lot growing up too. So yeah, I think that's really valuable. I mean, I even that's even putting that on my like resume, something about that got me a gig one time. I remember like I got hired for this really big event because they wanted to hire a musician based on, it was the speaker who was coming in, and they wanted to hire music that fit the theme, and it was this kind of world traveling concept. And in my bio, I had this thing that I grew up overseas, and I was my musical influences are diverse from all kinds of world music cultures, and and so they picked up on that, and that got me a gig, so
you didn't tell them you grew up listening to Dashboard Confessional.
Yeah, I was in exotic places, but I was just staying in my room crying on my bed listening to Dashboard.
Oh man, but it's funny you mentioned that though, because I remember the first time I talked to my wife, we were just talking, and somehow, because I always try to hide the fact that I grew up overseas from people initially, just because I've said it 1,000 times and it's just boring to me now.
Right.
But somehow that came up that I lived in, I think one of my buddies was trying to like start something between us, and he was like, "Oh, Jeremiah lived in Morocco or whatever." And she's like, "You grew up in Africa?" And her eyes lit up, and I was like, "Oh, oh, maybe I should talk about this." And
it does.
From that point on, it was all, I knew I had her in the bag.
Yeah. Yep. That is very true. That's one thing that, kind of a similar thing when I met my old lady. So yeah, you gotta make it work in your favor when you can.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Well, yeah, I think that's a good place to end it. What do you think?
Yeah, I think we're good.
Well, I think we would love to hear from you. So this, I don't know where you are listening to the podcast, but you can, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, you can leave a review, and we'd love to hear what some of your influences are, and what musicians or bands or guitarists are really important and impactful to you. If you're listening on YouTube, you can just leave a comment and let us know. You can also follow us on Instagram. You can find me at Beyond the Guitar and Jeremiah at Chomachi. If you would like to learn how to make your own classical or fingerstyle guitar arrangements like I do, you can go to my website, beyondtheguitar.com, and take my free training, Fretboard Freedom, where I teach you how to find and play chords anywhere on the fretboard. It's a great way to get started. It's completely free, so check that out. Jeremiah, I touched on it briefly, but where can people find you?
You can find me, just look up Chomachi. It's CHOMACHI. Be having some new tracks coming out in the next couple weeks. And then you can also look up my band Junko, JUNCO. My buddy and I, we play indie rock and / instrumental music. So I play drums for that. And my buddy Andrew sings and plays guitar. So yeah, it's a good time. You should look it up.
Definitely. It is that's on my chill playlist. Nice. You guys on my chill playlist.
Yeah, very chill. Very.
It's good. It's good driving music.
It's great driving music. great beach music, great just lounging around music. Yeah.
Very good vibes.
Yeah.
Like
especially
that folky indie rock, good vibes.
Yeah, especially the first two albums. The second one the first two albums. The third one is more like ambient, but the first two albums for sure.
Yeah, all very good stuff. Well, thank you so much for listening. Hope you enjoyed. As always, much love, and we'll see you in the next one.